Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. You know how I somewhat frequently state that writers in crypto media are basically a bunch of C students because they get their grammar wrong, they get their facts wrong, they don't even proofread their own work. It's just like type, here's my first draft, and post to the Webernets. Well, here's a good example of why I say that. Here's the headline from FX Street, which is one of two crypto media outlets that I found running this story. Here's the headline. Ripple's on-demand liquidity, fiat-to-fiat transactions, do not need XRP infrastructure. CTO David Schwartz. Which is obviously completely, unquestionably nonsense. It don't make no damn sense in this world. So I'm going to highlight this, tear it to shreds, and then discard it in the trash bin where it belongs. But before going any further, if you would please delicately tap that like button. And also, if you believe that these C student writers deserve a participation award at a minimum, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. Why the hell not? First, we're going to start out with something a little bit funny because, what if your blood gets a boiling because all this nonsense is out in the world? Well, check this out. In one of my videos yesterday, I highlighted a tweet from Brad Garlinghouse, which made it clear that he liked Burr jokes. And I wasn't with it. I was like, what the hell's a Burr joke? And so I Googled Burr jokes trying to find out on my own, and it brought up a picture of a burrito wearing a scarf, holding itself like it's cold, and then it was underneath the burrito it said it was a burrito, and it's cold, get it? Terrible joke. Well, apparently that's not what it was, and I made it clear that I didn't know what the hell this was, and that's all I could find. Well, Martin Valk has come to the rescue, and he wrote, Moon Lambo, just watching one of your videos from today. About the Burr jokes. Burr is the sound the money printing machine makes, and he sent this lovely link, and there's going to be a little bit of sounder, so I just had to highlight this because this is hilarious. So let's get laughing before we get our blood boiling. And look at this guy. This guy is cranking out the money, just printing it, and you can take this little thing and slide it up, and it increases, and the screen starts shaking. Burr! That is awesome. I'm just cracking up watching this. Now you can slow it down though. Look, we're taking it down a notch now. We're taking it down a notch. That poor purple or pink-headed guy, he's working. But now he's got to get back to work. Crank it back up to 11! Okay, that's enough. I need to turn that off. That's kind of loud and annoying. But now I know. So anyway, Martin, thank you very much for keeping me in the know. Now I feel like I'm back in the cool kids clique. So that was one headline. That was from FX Street. Where did this all stem from? Well, as far as I know, it came from this tweet, which has been deleted, from crypto media outlet You Today. And I mapped this out. The reason I have this link still is because I mapped out my videos a little bit earlier today, and then I went to record it, and they deleted it. They deleted the actual tweet. They didn't delete the story, though. Here's the actual story. They just renamed it, and hilariously, they have an inaccuracy in the correction, which is freaking awesome. So what did this used to read as? Here's what let me just show you this first, okay? Let me scroll. No, it wasn't there. Maybe the next tab. Here we go. So here's what it was. For some reason, it still shows on Twitter because somebody retweeted it. This was the tweet that they deleted. For some reason, it's still visible here, but it was titled, Ripple's on-demand liquidity solution can work without XRP infrastructure, says David Schwartz. So you can see it right here. It's officially published from You Today. And so they renamed it and corrected the piece after they got some backlash from the XRP community, and rightfully so. And here's what they renamed it. Ripple CEO explains why they chose to go with fiat-to-fiat transactions before transitioning to ODL. Does anybody see something wrong with that? I do. David Schwartz is not the CEO of Ripple. That would be Brad Garlinghouse. David Schwartz is the CTO, so their correction, this is why I'm saying, man, they're a bunch of C students, a little apathetic about things, but there we go. It is hilarious, though, so I'm happy to highlight all this nonsense. But let's run through this piece and explain where this came from and then tear it to shreds, and then we can just move on about our day. In a new tweet, David Schwartz, the CTO of blockchain payments provider Ripple, has explained why Ripple chose to go with xCurrent before transitioning to on-demand liquidity, which of course is ODL, which allows conducting instant cross-border payments. The executive claims that fiat-to-fiat transactions didn't require fiat-to-fiat transactions. That doesn't seem so. I don't think they fixed that. I only read, to be honest, I only read the earlier version of this, so I'm experiencing the new iteration of this right now in real time with you. I don't think that's what that said earlier. That seems like a broken sentence. The executive claims that fiat-to-fiat transactions didn't require fiat-to-fiat transactions, which is why they could be deployed faster. Okay. XRP comes in handy for providing the most impact when it comes to taping into a ready supply of customers. So there are two tweets here on the screen, and I'll go to the actual thread here, but this is what led to the author's confusion here. David Schwartz did write, on-demand liquidity can work with a piece cutout. So already that's causing some confusion, apparently. I don't think that should, but let's keep going further. It gets worse. Not what David Schwartz wrote, but the interpretation as a result of what he wrote. One piece would be cut out if the sender had XRP already. One piece would be cut out if the recipient will accept XRP. If both apply, it's just an XRP payment. And I've talked about that concept on the channel in the past. If you want to remove the additional fees associated with exchanges, which, they're not that huge, but, there are exchange fees on both ends of the transaction because the exchanges are the liquidity pools that are really making this partner. They're officially partnered with Ripple to utilize on-demand liquidity, and thus XRP is a bridge currency. You can cut that out. You absolutely can, but that would require the sender and receiver to just have just hold XRP to make that possible. And in particular, if you're a bank, for example, you probably don't want to do that because you don't want to engage in the risks. You just want to take advantage of the ecosystem because you know that there are other people that are willing to take on the risk of holding XRP, resulting in actual liquidity, which is a really cool position for things to be in, frankly. The next tweet from David Schwartz is, we chose to do fiat to fiat first for a few reasons, but the biggest one is that it can work with no XRP infrastructure at all, so could be deployed fastest. And that sentence right there is the primary reason they got twisted up mentally like a pretzel here. What he's talking about here, and it was clear to me the first time I read this, is that when he's talking about fiat to fiat first for a few reasons without XRP, they're talking about the messaging portion, not the settlement portion, which does require XRP if you're talking about on-demand liquidity. So already crystal clear to me, and I can understand how somebody not in the know could understand it. So it's not like they made some unforgivable sin, but they were wrong and they should have done better. I still do believe that. It's not some unforgivable sin. I really do still like the Outlet U today, by the way, and I'm going to keep checking them out and covering their pieces from time to time. They just made a mistake that they shouldn't have made. They should have looked in a little bit further because that's a pretty out there claim. For people that are allegedly in the world of crypto and write usually 2 to 3 stories about Ripple and XRP per day. Oh, yes, they do. Check their website. They sure do. I feel like they should have known better. And if they sounded something that was outside of the norm to this degree, maybe you should have asked the guy who wrote this particular tweet and could have added some clarification, and then you wouldn't have set the entire XRP community ablaze on crypto Twitter. Just saying. Then he wrapped up his tweet here, David Schwartz, by writing, then we could use XRP where it could provide the most impact with a ready supply of customers and payments. Exactly. And so there you go. And so there was additional clarification here. So here's the tweet thread. I pulled it up just a little bit earlier, showing you today's initial tweet with that bogus title about Ripple's on-demand liquidity solution cannot work without XRP infrastructure, or can work without XRP infrastructure, which is incorrect. Somebody named Michael retweeted that and wrote just basically the headline of the title. And then another person named Michael, because Michael is a very popular name, almost as popular as the name Matt was in the 80s. Michael Nardolillo wrote, article's interpretation of this tweet is inaccurate. On-demand liquidity always uses XRP. David Schwartz jumped in, and he responded by writing, correct. By first, I meant before we implemented on-demand liquidity. Before on-demand liquidity, we built what we used to call xCurrent. It did fiat-to-fiat payments and didn't require any XRP infrastructure. This was a necessary step because there wasn't much XRP infrastructure then, and institutions didn't want to touch digital assets. Exactly. And many institutions, frankly, still don't. I think a lot of them it's pretty clear that they're going to ultimately custody crypto assets for customers, but as far as holding themselves and taking on that type of risk, I don't know that banks are going to want to do that anytime soon. You'd have to be like the outlier bank, a forward-thinking bank that heavily wants to engage in crypto, and that's your thing. Okay, maybe. There's not exactly a whole lot of that in the short term, I don't suspect. But that's fine if anybody wants to do it. I just don't think that that's going to be the place for banks in the short to perhaps medium term. Maybe not ever. I don't know if they're ever going to, because I understand that banks are holding Nostra Vostra accounts, but my gosh. Even though that is risky, and I've highlighted that before, exchange rates from one currency to another, like, for instance, the Argentine peso years ago, I remember when that crashed, and there have been more recent examples, like recently the Mexican peso against the dollar crashed it may have been since March. I highlighted this, I could be a little off in the dates, but very recently, the Mexican peso crashed about 20% against the United States dollar. So stuff like this happens. There's still going to be some risk, but if you're the bank utilizing XRP instead and not using Nostra Vostra accounts, like you don't have your own Nostra Vostra accounts, you have eliminated all of that risk, actually. And you're letting, like I said earlier, people that want to hold cryptocurrencies assume all of that risk, which is very cool stuff here. Now, there are other people in the XRP community, this is just one example, Galvatron, that were correcting the record here. And he wrote, and he had actually retweeted this piece from, I believe this was the piece from you today, and this says the tweet is now unavailable. I don't know why in some places it's showing. I don't know if the Twitter it hasn't updated on all of their servers. So it could be the case if I refresh this that it'll just go away. Actually, that'll be a fun test. Let's see if it goes away. Refresh. Let's check just for fun. Nah, it's still there. Well, it's still a reasonable theory because, again, Galvatron's tweet doesn't show that anymore. But I believe that was the You Today piece. Yeah, it was. Here, you can see it right here. Here's the link. But Galvatron wrote, "This is completely wrong. On-demand liquidity cannot work without XRP. What David Schwartz was referring to as fiat to fiat is just plain RippleNet using Nostra Vostro, formerly Xcurrent. The piece cut out refers to one side or the other of an ODL payment dealing in XRP directly without an exchange, or no exchange." So there you go. But anyway, there we go. So we've torn that to shreds, corrected it, and we've had a killer time doing it. And we got to check out the Burr website. I can't do the rolling R thing, so I can't do it. If I do it, it sounds like blah, 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 like I'm choking on something, like blah, blah, blah. Like that's as good as I can do that. Maybe you can do it better, and if so, high five, my friend. I'm highly impressed. But that's it for this video. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything, because of anything that I say or write, that would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!